We have to love the people doing the work in order to get the work done. That's what philanthropy needs to do to be effective.
Why would we underinvest in the people who are showing up for us every day?
I am a diehard football fan. Now imagine if they entered every game and before the game they did a press conference and they said, we're going to approach this game with 5% of our energy.
Hey, Break Fake Rules listeners, welcome back. I'm Communications Claire from the Stupski Foundation. Today, returning to the co-host seats are the always wonderful Jamie Allison, Executive Director of the Walter and Elise Haas Fund, and Glen Galaich, CEO here at the Stupski Foundation. Jamie and Glen discuss the intensifying pressure on nonprofits and call philanthropy in to stop playing small and start using our resources like we want our partners to win. There's honestly no one better to speak to this than our special guest for this episode, Rusty Stahl, President and CEO of Fund the People. Rusty is a leading nonprofit advocate dedicated to maximizing investment in the nonprofit workforce. His mission? To adequately compensate and honor the powerful contributions of nonprofit workers. He also has a great podcast fittingly called Fund the People. I highly recommend you subscribe and listen to it. And be sure to check out an episode Rusty has coming out next month in conversation with our very own Glen about his upcoming book, Control, Why Big Giving Falls Short. Now on with the show. Rule breakers, we're glad you're here.
Welcome everyone to another exciting edition of Break Fake Rules. Today, I have the legendary co-host with me today. That is Jamie Allison, the most popular co-host on Break Fake Rules. We took a survey over LinkedIn, the most popular. And I know Ralph came in second. He was very upset. He's going to try to do more to get people to, see him. But it's hard, Jamie. You really are
You're
the
funny,
most popular
Glenn.
co-host.
You're very funny. Ralph is my cousin, so we are not in competition with each other.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I suggest competition?
He did not come in second. We are tied.
I see.
We are stitched
Okay.
at the hip as co-hosts
Got it.
on Break Fake Rules. Hi, Glenn. It's nice to be back.
Nice to see you. What have you been up to?
I'm glad you mentioned LinkedIn because there's something I want to talk about. I just recently had a post on LinkedIn that got quite a bit of comments and reposts. I posted an article that the Chronicle of Philanthropy just published about basically not balancing the work of the community and community impact on the backs of nonprofit workers through low salaries. And so I reposted the article and just said, hey, no matter how many times I look at this issue, like the math just does not work for me. Like this calculus doesn't work. Like why would we underinvest in the people who are showing up for us every day? Sometimes they're showing up in partnership with government. Sometimes they are showing up for us every day in response to government overreach. Sometimes they're showing up for us in places where the government can't or won't show up for us. And the response I got to my post was just incredible. And so many nonprofit workers commented on this post to say that, philanthropy has some responsibilities here because of the size and the duration of our grants and the restricted nature of the grants, and the sector not really understanding the calculus of what it means to run a nonprofit enterprise. And so I'm really excited that we have Rusty on the show today, and particularly right now, as you know, I care a lot about the discourse coming from the federal government that's framing nonprofits as potentially undermining the nation by undermining security, undermining national interest, calling nonprofits wasteful, and creating an atmosphere that is skeptical and derogatory of the very sector and the very people who are here for us every day, for after school and childcare and education and hospitals there, and creating like the social and community hubs that we all benefit from. Like these are literally the institutions that actually make America great. Seeing them disparaged is just so painful to me.
It is painful. It has been since day one of term 2 of the Trumpy. It's just been this thing. And
they won't let up. They just won't let up.
It is the age of retribution. There are a lot of nonprofits out there that I fundamentally disagree with that were kind of singled out for being, either hate groups or otherwise. And this really lit up the right. We're seeing it, people being dragged into courts and having to explain what's going on at nonprofits. And when they get in front of the Senate or they get in front of the House, I always love it when Jim Jordan gets all righteous. He gets all righteous on us, but there's nothing there. There's like no meat to what they're saying. And it's all just part of this ongoing retribution campaign. So what do you think, Jamie? Like, I hear your anger and I'm with you. What do we do?
Well, from where we sit in philanthropy, we have the opportunity and the privilege to do what one of my mantras is: fund nonprofits to win. We have to fund our nonprofit partners like we really want them to win for our missions. I think, for those of us like me, I think you have a background too in political science, Glen. I think about de Tocqueville and, what his observations about America and the power of association and civil society. That is one of the things that makes this country great. And I think we need to remember that and invest in that. And then, of course, we're seeing the people power every day on streets, in protest, in mutual aid, looking out for each other, supporting each other. We need to see more of that, and we've got to support that. And I think that your show and others like it, again, have the opportunity to present, I was going to say a counter narrative. I don't think it's a counter narrative, but to present the truth that we are better off because of this sector. We should, in philanthropy, fund it, support it, as if we want our sector to win, because a lot is at stake.
And what does to win mean? It means more people eating, more people with healthcare, more people with rights,
more people with housing.
Yeah. And it is a huge challenge to get our peers to buy into what a win actually means and how much they have to shed of their own rules and barriers to really invest with that mantra. It's a powerful mantra. I don't know how many other funders out there spend time answering that question. What does win look like and how soon do we want it? Because I think it goes the other way around. The way a lot of funders operate is we have this small amount of money against the backdrop of all the other money that we have, which is being invested in things other than nonprofits. But we have this small amount. So how can we win with that small amount? How can we win with 5%? And I just, fundamentally believe that we need to find a way to move beyond 5% and see all the resources we have available. But it's just a challenging lens for a lot of our peers to use.
Philosophically, I agree with you. We are too big to play small.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Another good one. Look at that. You are bringing them today. But we are too big to play small.
We are too big to play small.
And so today we've got Rusty Stahl with us, who is representing the workforce of the nonprofit sector and asking a lot of these key questions. How do we play bigger with more? How do we do that? And what's our responsibility to workers in this case, who you said earlier, are carrying this entire mission and doing it at enormous sacrifice?
They are carrying the democratic mission.
Yeah.
They are the immune system for our democracy. And so it's not a surprise to me that if you are interested in eroding democratic norms, if you are interested in dismantling democracy, that you would attack nonprofits. It's not a surprise to me.
Yeah. I mean, and isn't it interesting? I've been listening. I listen to a lot of media and I hear the president talk, and he always talks about these trained organizations that show up at ICE arrests and such. And he talks about them being professional and organized and extremely well paid. And I was thinking, there's a guy who's never paid attention to the nonprofit sector, because they're not.
I don't know if you know this about me. I love a sports documentary.
Do you know? I didn't know that.
I do. One of the things I like about sports documentaries, I often will say that I think I would be a better organizational leader if I had played an organized sport. I'm really interested in the ways that people bring their unique talents together to win together. I'm really interested in how coaches get the best out of players to advance a common goal, to win, and to learn from mistakes. And I think, again, our best nonprofits are organizing themselves every day to win for their mission. So yes, they're disciplined, and yes, they're trained, and yes, they have a goal in mind. But you're absolutely right. Well paid? Absolutely not. There are so many studies that demonstrate that that's not the case. CEP has done a lot of work around nonprofit worker burnout. There's new research coming out of the Nonprofit Finance Fund about nonprofit worker well-being. We have a lot of work to do to invest in the people who are investing in us.
Yeah, and it's interesting because flipping over to the foundation side, I have a book coming out. Did you know that?
I've heard something. Is it called Control?
It is.
It was a little Janet Jackson for you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Did you get that?
I've heard many people said that used to be your walk-up music. Should I do that?
I have 2 walkout songs, but you should definitely use Control.
I think I have to now. Anyway, it is the name of the book. And in the book, there's a part, very brief part, where I kind of get into what you just said. I use sports. And the question I have, I'm a Bay Area sports fan. I am a diehard football fan, and I watch the other 2 teams when they're winning. Now, imagine if they entered every game, and before the game, they did a press conference, and they said, we're going to approach this game with 5% of our energy.
Said no one ever.
This game, we're putting 5% into this one because we want to reserve our energy for the games 3 weeks from now when we're going to put in 50%. Because we think if we can just, we might not win. In fact, we might get really blown out.
Game over, Glenn. This is a mic drop. This is the best one you've ever done. Like, you've done it. Like, you've been making this point in different ways for some time now. And this is the best one. This is it.
Is that the one?
Got me.
All right. Well, hey, you're the one who brought up the sports. That's all I have to say. Do you want to introduce our guest? He's waiting right now.
Oh, I'd love to.
Hey, Break Fake Rules listeners, Glen here. I want to share some news with you. I wrote a book. It's called Control: Why Big Giving Falls Short. You've heard me question philanthropic big giving before, but there's an issue that no one wants to talk about. Philanthropy has a control problem, and it's costing communities dearly. Billionaire donors get major tax breaks to park money in charitable funds. Today, there's over $2 trillion stockpiled in these accounts, growing to $18 trillion by 2050. Can you believe that? That's money that's just sitting there, often invested in for-profit investments instead of being put to work in communities. For years, I believed that centering donors was the best way to maximize the impact of every dollar donated. I even championed that system, and I was wrong. In Control, I take you inside these institutions to show how excessive donor control and the fake rules that protect it keep money from moving when it's needed most. The good news is we created this system, and we can change it. Pre-order your copy of Control: Why Big Giving Falls Short.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Break Fake Rules. Today, we have Rusty Stahl. Rusty Stahl is the CEO of Fund the People, an organization he founded to advance the idea that philanthropy should invest in the people behind the mission. His work asks our sector to confront a hard truth. One of the biggest constraints facing nonprofits is a chronic lack of investment in the workforce. Through research, advocacy, and practical tools, and through his own podcast, he's been urging funders to rethink how we resource the nonprofit professionals who hold our communities together. And in this political moment, Rusty is making an even bolder case that investing in nonprofit workers isn't just good management, it's civic defense. If nonprofits are part of the social fabric and democratic infrastructure of this country, then strengthening the people who power nonprofits is part of protecting democracy itself. Rusty, we're so glad you're here. Welcome to Break Fake Rules. Let's get into the conversation.
Well, thank you for that amazing intro. I'm really glad to be here, Jamie.
So glad you're here. You've said that a problem facing nonprofits isn't a lack of leadership, it's a lack of investment. Can you unpack that for our listeners? And what are the effects of this deficit?
Yeah. So often we expect nonprofit leaders to do and be everything because there's not enough people to do those things that need to get done. And so it's not because there's a lack of people out there able and willing to do those jobs. It was because those jobs were not attractive, And so I started looking at, well, how does the money flow into the sector and what does that look like when it comes to supporting attractive jobs, good salaries, benefits, making jobs appealing and really accessible. And so what I saw is a lot of nonprofit jobs were held by people who could afford to be underpaid and overworked, either because they were independently wealthy or they were upper middle class. They had somebody supporting them, whether it was parents or a spouse. And that was how organizations, that's the business model, is we get people to work for us who can afford to work for us, and the folks who can't afford it don't go. And so it creates gender, race, class, and other barriers to entering these kind of jobs and careers. And so I saw that foundations were not doing enough to support quality jobs in nonprofits, but that's what we saw. And that's what the deficit looked like.
And my understanding, Rusty, is that, well, I think we all three have been in this business about the same amount of time. And in that time, I think we've seen some positive movement on what have typically been called charity raters. And those charity rating entities de-incentivized organizations from having staff. You get higher ratings from most of these places if all the money goes to the so-called program. So the program is anything but people who work at an organization. You are dinged for having overhead. So there's been this culture built into, in addition to what you're talking about, foundations being resistant to investing in staff and labor, just the general everyday donor has been, when they go to some kind of charity website, they see a charity navigator rating that says, high or low based on how much money they're investing in their program as an organization. So these are all fake rules. All of this, what you're talking about is just one big pile of fake rules that in effect has had a historically damaging effect on the morale and the effectiveness and the success of organizations. So when you found some foundations that break those fake rules, what are they doing?
That's a really good question. A lot of them are increasing the amount of money they allow grantees to use, the percentage of their grants for quote unquote overhead, from 0 to 5% to 10%, or no real rules, but don't use it for overhead, to 20, 25, 29%. And so that's good. And that's really, really important. And some big ones have done it. MacArthur, Hewlett, Ford. I just don't think the field as a whole is taking that up. Just because the big names do something and take the time to do the research and the policy, internal policy work, doesn't mean that all those little family foundations out there that have one staff or no staff are going to follow suit. And we know that that's the majority of the funders out there. But they're doing things like saying, hey, we give you general support. We encourage you to use it to support good jobs for your staff. That's something that Jamie Allison's organization, the Walter and Elise Haas Fund, has done. And I think it's admirable. So I think those are some of the things they're doing. Many funders are saying we're moving from giving project support to general support, which I think is a critically important change, where I find that there's a fake rule among the reformers that general operating support is enough of a change, that it is enough that the funder can wash their hands and say, we've done what we can to support our grantees and their staff. In reality, general support is not adequate to boost investment in the staff of nonprofits. We need more incentives and intentionality and, frankly, restrictions on those dollars so that they can actually be used for salaries, benefits, and other needed infrastructure to support the staff.
Well, you just said something big. You just called out my co-host as a huge fake rule breaker. And I think we should hear from you right now, Jamie. I mean, that's an accusation that I admire. And the other piece is you just said restricted is good. So I'm going to want to come back to that one. Jamie, why are you a fake rule breaker? Why did Rusty just call you that?
Well, Glenn, you just went to one of the two things one of the one thing I was going to say to Rusty about the restricted support, but I will happily talk a bit about Rusty's reference. And thank you so much, Rusty. That's really kind. And I've had the opportunity to talk with you on your podcast about the work that we've been doing at the Walter and Elise Haas Fund, specifically through the Endeavor Fund. And one of the things that the Walter and Elise Haas Fund is doing through the Endeavor Fund is specifically working with organizations that are making a commitment to provide high quality jobs in the nonprofit sector. The Endeavor Fund grantees are all working on addressing the gender and racial wealth gap. And part of the way they do that is ensuring that they are providing high quality jobs with living wages, paid time off, and other benefits. And one of the things that we found is that if a funder will engage with a nonprofit about the issues related to providing good jobs, the nonprofits absolutely want to do it. But unfortunately, funders send too many signals that we don't want to invest in that. And Glenn, you just brought it up recently by using those aggregator services that try to rate nonprofits based on their overhead. It's sent the message. Those platforms and foundations themselves have sent the message that low overhead is good, but that's where the salary line item is. And so we try to get maximum impact in community by balancing it on the backs of staff who are then underpaid and burned out. And, at the fund, we recognize that any impact that the fund's grant making will have in the community will not happen if the people who do the work do not have what they need to take care of themselves. We've got to take care of the people who are taking care of the people.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked at a foundation and I've worked with many funders, and I wouldn't be here if I didn't respect and appreciate the hard work that many funders are doing to improve their foundations, to do a better job at being grant makers. And so I say every critical thing I say about foundations is said with love and respect.
Me too.
But the kind of operating
I believe
assumption,
Rusty when he says it with love. I don't know if I believe
Glenn.
you, Glenn, when you say with love.
I'm just a big ball of empathy. Come on now.
No, but the operating assumption, look, when you've got the money and the power, and it's like we're selecting among a set of potential grantees, right? It's like, how can we get the biggest bang for the buck, for the least amount? That seems to be often the operating assumption. And that works with government as a contractor or funder as well of nonprofits. So I think that's a problem. It's kind of like we're the supply side. And so we don't have to worry about building up your organization. We're just going to invest in the program that we want, that we care about. And you're the delivery agent. Your organization's a vessel for our money to deliver that program. And that's not actually how social change works. It's not how nonprofits work either. There are people. It's the social sector. They're a human being. We're not creating widgets. And even people who create widgets deserve respect and a decent wage. But we're trying to do something much more relational and human in nonprofits and much more complex to measure and to actually have success in social change. Staff are not overhead. They are the bedrock of organizational strategy, effectiveness, capacity, impact. We have to love the people doing the work in order to get the work done. And that's what philanthropy needs to do to be effective. The fake rule is ignore the overhead, ignore those indirect costs, and put all your money, as much money as you can, into program. And that will get the biggest bang for the buck. The reality is that actually undermines the people doing the work, and it undermines the program. And what we're seeing in our research is the more money you put into the staff and the people doing the work, the better the program is and the greater the impact and results. So it's counterintuitive to this fake rule of avoid overhead, avoid indirect costs at all costs. It's not actually an effective grant-making approach.
Rusty, I'd like to ask you to talk about why investing in the nonprofit sector, perhaps right now in particular, has become more important as, our federal institutions have become less reliable.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say earlier, the deficit of investment in the nonprofit workforce doesn't just come from philanthropy. It comes from all sources, individual donors, as you mentioned, Glenn, with using those overhead rating sites, those nonprofit rating sites. And we had Michael Thatcher from Charity Navigator on our Fund the People podcast a couple episodes ago, season 9, episode 2. And he actually pledged to explore taking the overhead ratio out of their ratings formula and just to have the overhead data on the nonprofit profile pages, but not actually in the rating formula.
That's a win, Rusty.
That's a win, right? Let's navigate away from the overhead myth in these rating systems. Yeah. It also comes from government. Many of my liberal and left-wing friends will say we shouldn't have nonprofits. We should be in the business going out of business. It should be government providing these basic services. And I think that's great in theory, but we also see what government can do when an administration you don't agree with comes in. So we always need grassroots power. We always need community-based power that's not part of the state. And yet you could say the nonprofit sector is, a system that's part of capitalism. You can say philanthropy is part of capitalism. It's true. But I'm just saying it's not directly controlled by the state or business. It may be dependent in some ways, but it's not controlled by. And so that's why we need our nonprofits, left, right, and center. We need the whole nonprofit sector because this is the place where Americans can live out our values of freedom of speech, freedom of belief, freedom to give, freedom to believe what you want to believe, say what you want to say. And that's why we need more nonprofit healthcare, more nonprofit journalism, more nonprofit TV, not less. We need more business to act like nonprofits, not the other way around.
I really appreciate it, Rusty. You got into a whole bunch there. Democracy, purpose of nonprofits, First Amendment. You're coming back, I guess is what it comes down to. You're coming back, and we're going to start right there.
Rusty, thank you for the work you're doing.
Hey, thank you. No, thank you both for the opportunity to speak with you. I'm sorry if I ranted and raved. And there's a lot of fake rules to discuss.
I'm glad you did. Thanks. That was terrific. And thank you all for joining us on another exciting episode of Break Fake Rules. We'll see you next time.